Stanley Groups again. Now today we are going to continue to look at a bit more complicated speed problems and how do we draw out the model. So let's look at this particular question, which is about 3 marks. Sometimes it can be 2 marks if the school is very stingy. It can be a 2-mark question, but sometimes it can be a 3-mark question. So but it's something that tests the student on the concept on speed, right? Because when you talk about speed, then you also need to know about the time and the distance and how they relate to one another. So let's look at the question, and you'll find that you may get confused right now because you might not have seen the question before, or you don't understand. So a van and a truck were traveling from town X to town Y, which were 600 kilometers apart. The truck set off 1 hour earlier than the van, but arrived 2 hours later. So some students, when they see this sentence, they get really confused. They don't really exactly understand what is this. So it means that the truck set off earlier and still arrived later. Now, when you think about that, so isn't the truck slower? Because you set off earlier and then you still arrive later. You must be very slow, and you take longer time because you're slow. So understand this concept where who is slower, which is the truck, because the truck took longer time. Alright, so when you do speed problem, you will need to understand, recognize who is faster, who is slower, right? That is what you need to recognize. And then the speed of the van was 120 km per hour. So what's the speed of the truck? So how do we exactly draw this model? Now, you can see that they both arrive. So because they both arrive, your model or the two vehicles, they will have to travel all the way to the end. So you have town X and town Y. So that's your distance line. And the two vehicles, they started from the same place. So who go first? So you can see the van go first, right? No, the truck go first, sorry. The truck go first. The truck set off earlier and then arrive later. So arrive means all the way to the end. So this is the model which tells you that the truck has gone all the way to the end. So you draw all the way to the destination, and the van set off later, right? If the truck set off earlier, then the van set off later. And if the truck arrived later, then the van must have arrived earlier. So the van will arrive earlier, so you draw all the way to the end as well. So these two vehicles is all the way to the end. So the first line on top is something like the distance line. So whether you want to draw the distance line is up to you, but usually I will have the distance line to show me from where to where. So from X to Y, the distance is 600 km. So what's the next step? The next step is to put the family. Like the van has one big part, so there is a one big family: speed, distance, and time. So in the family, there are 3 values: speed, distance, and time. And then for the truck, there's also one big part, and the truck also has a family. So every part of the journey has a family. Okay, so if there are 2 parts of the journey, then there'll be 2 families. Okay, so what do we do next? Now, the next thing is to put the numbers inside. So 600 km is where we put over here. And isn't that the distance traveled by both the van and the truck? So which means that I can also put here as well. So that's the distance traveled by both vehicles. And the truck set off 1 hour earlier and arrived 2 hours later. So can I put this inside the model? You can't, because it doesn't tell you the total time taken, the total time that the truck has taken to travel. It's just part of the time taken by the truck. So you cannot put the 1 hour and 2 hours inside. So sometimes there are some numbers or values that you cannot put in the model. So what do? Then we don't put them, but we take note. Okay, we take note and we use that later to solve. And the speed of the van was 120 km per hour. That one we can put inside. So what's the speed of the truck, which is the question mark? And your model is done. Alright, so your model is done. And then you tell Mr. Ong, like, do we use ratio method? Can we use ratio method? Well, if the question is a bit simpler, you may not want to use ratio method because, number one, ratio method cannot be used for you cannot possibly use ratio for everything. Not every question must use ratio method, right? Number two, you can find other values easily. Right, there are some numbers that are missing which you can find easily. So when do you use ratio method that we talked about in the last lesson? We use ratio method when there are many things missing and when there are only two kinds of speed. Alright, you know, when you see 2 types of speed, then you think about about ratio. But in this question, it's slightly simpler. So you need to know your triangle, which is very important because it tells you the formula. Right, the formula. How do you find speed, distance, and time? And if you look at the question or the model, what can you fill in? I can find the time taken by the van to reach. So distance divided by time. So time is equal to distance, which is 600 km divided by speed. And you must check the unit to make sure that the units are the same. For example, I always tell my students, when you work out the answer, you don't just write 600 divided by 120. You have to write down the units, and then you divide by 120 km per hour so that you can check to see whether you have the same km. And if you don't have the same units, then you will have to make it the same before you can divide. So you divide, you will get 5 hours. So the van took 5 hours to travel. And if the van is faster, that tells you the van take shorter time. And the truck is slower, so the truck take longer time. And how much longer time did the truck take? The truck take 1 hour earlier and 2 hours later. How much longer time? Isn't that 1 plus 2? So the truck took 3 hours more. So if the truck took 3 hours more, okay, then how long did the truck take to travel? So you take 5 hours, which is the van. Alright, the van took 5 hours to travel, and 5 plus 3. So the truck must have taken 8 hours because the truck is slower, right? And then now you can find the speed of the truck. So speed is equal to distance, right? Distance, write down the units, divide by time, which is 8 hours. And you take 600 divided by 8, right? If it's a paper 1, you can't use calculator. If it's paper 2, then you use calculator. And you will get 75 km per hour, which is the speed of the truck. And you got the answer already, right? So what's the lesson here? Now, the lesson here is, of course, to be able to draw the model, to know how they travel, so they can draw out the model. And also about to recognize who is faster, who is slower. Because whoever is faster, then what will happen to his time taken? Whoever is faster, then the person will take a shorter time. And if the person is slower, then the person will take a longer time. Alright, and then the next thing to understand is how to draw the model. If the two vehicles have arrived, then when you draw the motion, how they move, you draw all the way to the end. Right? They travel all the way to the end, and that's how you draw the model. Right? So that's how we solve this question using the speed model. So do understand how you draw, so that if you can draw a good model, then you find that you can solve the problem easier. Alright, so stay tuned to the next speed lesson. So you will find that in our YouTube channel, there will be a lot of lessons coming up. So we will try to create more lessons consistently, because sometimes there's a lot of things to look into. So you may find the video doesn't really come very regularly. All right, but we will try. Okay, we will try to create the lessons more consistently so that you can follow the lessons. And also we also have TikTok. All right, there's a TikTok channel as well, which is focused on careless mistakes. But in our YouTube channel, we also focus on careless mistakes. But will they be the same? Well, usually I will try to make all the lessons different from one another. So if you find that my TikTok channel has some careless mistakes lessons on careless mistake, it may not be the same as what you see in the YouTube channel, because my YouTube channel also have lessons on careless mistakes, but they may not be the same. So you might want to watch both, okay? Watch both the TikTok channel and the YouTube channel, because you might see different kinds of lessons. Alright, so see you in my next lesson, and also see you in my TikTok channel. Alright, so goodbye and see you next time.